Final hour overdrive continues. TSN 1050 now up on TSN 2. Bryan Hayes, Gord Miller, brought to you by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. 35 years ago today, what were you doing?
I was in Los Angeles.
You were in L.A.
Covering the Gretzky trade, yeah.
You were covering, so you were anticipating
the
trade.
So our station in Edmonton broke the story on August the 2nd that the Oilers were negotiating to trade Wayne Gretzky. Mm-hmm. And as Bob McKenzie points out, you guys must have been pretty big deals because no one else picked up on it. So I flew to L.A. on August the 3rd, and the Kings did all their announcements at a hotel. It's now called the Sheraton Airport, then called the Sheraton Lorena. And so we booked into the Sheraton Lorena, and I was hanging out in L.A. all weekend. Keith Olbermann hooked me up with baseball tickets, went to some Dodger games.
Really?
Great. Oh, it was fabulous. And my boss, like, this thing ain't happening, come home. And on the Sunday night, Olbermann got the drop on it. McNall's CFO or whatever had written the check. And so Wayne arrived, and there's a bunch of funny stuff about it, but one of the funny things about it was the hotel, my Visa card, I was like 23 years old. My Visa card had like a $2,000 limit, and I was at it. And the hotel was going to evict me as Wayne was arriving.
Right.
And so I'm negotiating, like begging them to stay. And Wayne walks by with Mike Barnett coming into his press conference. He goes, "What's going on?" I got a problem here. Wayne pulled out like $500 cash and said to the guy, "Will this cover it?" And I go, "Yeah." And Wayne goes to me, "You're a Joe."
No way.
Yeah. And so
did you ever pay him back?
So the next day I got an exclusive interview with him. And but first I get my office to send me money by Western Union.
Wow.
That's how long ago this was to pay him back.
Old school.
So the other funny part of it was when they finally agreed to the deal was like August the 7th, Bruce McNall, Wayne had gotten married that summer. Mm-hmm. He just gotten married.
Right.
And so he was staying at a friend's house in L.A., and McNall called the house, and the owner of the house's son answered. And McNall said, "I need to speak to Wayne Gretzky." The kid said, "I don't think I'm supposed to say he's here." And McNall said, "You just did. I need to talk to him." So he talked to Wayne, made sure it was cool, and everything else. The kid was Robin Thicke.
He was at Alan Thicke's house.
He's at Alan Thicke's house. So Robin Thicke, Blurred Lines, and all that.
Right.
But the other great part of it is the next summer, I was working for CBC then. So Sports Weekend had me go down and do a piece on Gretzky a year later, like the impact that Gretzky had in L.A. So we interview Wayne, do all this stuff, and interview Bruce McNall. And McNall, we finished. McNall says, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I brought my girlfriend down. We're going to stay for a few days." He said, "Oh, I got a movie premiere on Friday night. Do you want to go?" I'm like, "Sure." He said, "My assistant will hook you up." So, I said to my girlfriend, "We're going to
red carpet. Let's
go to
go.
Hollywood premiere Friday night." So off we go. We're at this thing. It's a comedy, and like halfway through, she says, "This is terrible. Can we leave?" I said, "I don't think you can leave a premiere in the middle. Like, I think walking out of a premiere is bad form." So after the thing, there's a cocktail reception, and I see McNall. I'm like, "Hey, good luck with the movie." We walk like, good luck with that turkey. It was Weekend at Bernie's.
You're kidding me.
It was the smash hit of the summer. So we're like a month later, my girlfriend and I watching TV. And for the 5th week in a row, the number one movie in the box is Weekend at Bernie's.
Weekend at Bernie's is a great movie.
They made a sequel.
Wow. You didn't like that movie?
Well, I remember she didn't. And I
guess
I was kind of
maybe you were a little bit persuaded.
I was like, yeah, whatever. But yeah.
Yeah.
So,
wow, that's wild.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, the trade.
35 years ago.
35 years ago, it's hard to, so think about it. That's August of 88. Within 7 years, there's another team in the LA area, Anaheim. San Jose, not really an expansion team, kind of an expansion team, but not really. Sort of the Minnesota North Stars, half of them moved to San Jose. But you got teams in Dallas. You got 2 teams in Florida. You got a team in Carolina. And
Arizona.
Tampa's won 3 Stanley Cups. Dallas has won the Cup. LA's won the Cup. Anaheim's won the Cup. Carolina's won the Cup. Like it's, I did the Hlinka Gretzky Cup last week in Slovakia. 6 members of the American team from California.
Right. Yeah, it's wild. Like you look at Austin Matthews, Matthew Nyes are both from Arizona.
Right. Like it's the impact of Gretzky on the sport is as much off the ice as on.
Yeah, it
changed everything.
When you look back on it, it was something that had to happen.
It changed the salaries. Now Wayne kind of had them, right? Because you talked earlier about, he was never drafted. He signed with Edmonton on his 18th birthday, so January of 79. He signed a personal services contract with Peter Pocklington. He was not under contract with the Oilers. He had a personal services contract with Pocklington, who was hedging on the NHL accepting teams from the WHA. It wasn't clear Edmonton would be one of them. It wasn't clear it was going to happen then. It didn't happen until the summer of 79. But eventually that contract had to be rewritten because you couldn't have a personal services deal. And that's when Gretzky had them. He did a 5-year deal. He was going to be a free agent in 1989. So he had them.
Right. Well, and do you think he was going to leave?
Well,
or did it make it easier on him? Hey, trade me so I'm not the bad guy.
No,
here.
I remember being somewhere with a bunch of guys from the Oilers, and Sport Magazine listed all the salaries for professional athletes, their best guesses at it. Now, remember, there's no salary disclosure.
Right, exactly. Even within the union, they didn't want that.
And it was like Willie Shoemaker was ahead of what Wayne was making, like the jockey. Like, it was just, so, I mean,
do you think it's possible for a trade, for a more shocking trade to happen in the sport?
Hard to, I mean.
Like, if McDavid got traded tonight, would it be crazier than the Gretzky deal?
Gretzky was so iconic, right? He was not just the most famous hockey player. He was one of the most famous athletes.
Right.
It was, I don't know. I mean, it's funny when Jonathan Huberdeau and Matthew Tkachuk got traded last year. That was the first time since the Gretzky trade that 200-point players were traded for each other in the same deal. But Jimmy Carson, remember?
Right. He was a good player.
Went back to Edmonton.
Oh, and the Oilers still won the Cup in '90 without him.
Without him, yeah. I just think, first of all, now there'd be more lead up.
There'd be like a request that would get out.
It would get out. There's just more.
Yeah.
I mean, the Gretzky thing, I mean, although we reported it, I mean, it did blindside a lot of people.
Right. And it would have been in the process well before August 2nd.
Yeah.
They would have been talking about it and run it past Wayne, and he would have let them know.
We heard about it in July, but we were terrified to report it. I mean, Glenn Sather, the day we reported it, threatened to sue us.
Based on what?
Because the Oilers wrote selling season tickets. He was trying to chill us. I mean, Sather read Edmonton.
He knew what was coming.
Sather, it was his fiefdom. Like he terrorized everyone, right? Like Sather, I mean, Paul Coffey had enough of him. Andy Moog had enough of him. They got out. But he'd ban you from the building.
Right.
If he didn't like you, he'd ban you from the building.
So how would he have that power as the coach?
He was the general manager. He's the president.
Right. So I guess the Pocklington said, "Go ahead."
And it's
do
Edmonton,
you want.
right? Like he'd take you aside and just tear you apart.
Like that shocks me considering how successful he was. Like, who was possibly being critical? Well, that's like obviously some things would happen. You lose 3 in a row, people are
I would say this:
lost 3 in a row.
When they lost to LA in the Miracle on Manchester in '82, and I think they were 48 points better in the regular season. A headline in the Edmonton paper called them weak-kneed wimps. Said you'll never win with this group, and they never forgot that.
Yeah,
they were in the final the next year, won the Cup in '84, but. Yeah, it was like it's still a bit like that in some smaller markets. Like they run the show. Like
I understand that. I guess I'm just saying, like, it's one thing if you're in a small town and you're legitimately an awful team.
Yeah.
Then you could almost understand the sensitivity. But if you've won all those Stanley Cups, like, imagine still being bitter. And
it's not like Washington, because they're dining out in that one Cup win in 2018. I wonder if our next guest wants to talk about that.
Well, listen, you're setting him up to take a run at
yes.
me being in Toronto because the history is even worse, as you're aware of, Gord. But here he is, our main man from NBC and the Golf Channel, Steve Sands. What's happening, Sandsy?
Yes, taking a shot at the Caps?
No.
Yeah, I'm worried about your Caps.
Steve is a Washington Capitals fan.
Yeah.
And I think he's still dining out 5 years later on the Cup win. I'm just saying, Steve, there's still meat on that bone.
I'm still drunk from 5 years ago. Are you kidding me? That was the greatest win, greatest sports moment of my life.
Never mind Ovechkin in the fountain. Sands in Florida was like
right.
The only thing on the planet that would have made us winning the Stanley Cup better, although I do love Doc Emmerich, but to hear the dulcet tones of Gord Miller say the Stanley Cup is going to Washington would have been really good. But other than that, yeah, man, are you kidding me? 5 years ago, it seems like yesterday. They don't need to win again the rest of my life. I don't care.
Yeah.
I just want them to win one time. I'm sure people in Toronto.
Hayes will be the same way if the Leafs win.
That's the truth, Sandsy.
Of course.
That's it. Like, I can't tell you how many times I've done these hypothetical bits trying to interact with Leaf fans. Like, would you accept 20 years of being the worst team in the league for one cup? And I'd say yes.
I got news for you.
Yeah.
There's nothing, and you guys know this, and the people who listen to your show know this. There is nothing in sports like a Stanley Cup run. If your team can get past that first round and then another in the second and get to the conference finals and somehow get past that and get to the Stanley Cup final, you're talking about 8 weeks of just pure jubilation, pure heartbreak, pure angst, nervousness, excitement, the whole thing. It's the greatest thing in all the sports. And we've been in the Stanley Cup final twice. The first time it didn't work out so well. We got swept by Detroit, which I blame Esa Tikkanen for. But, there's nothing like a Stanley Cup run.
No.
We'll never forget it.
I'm with you on that. With Steve Sands of the Golf Channel on NBC. So we got the FedEx playoffs starting this weekend, Sandsy, and the big story leading up to it was the pursuit of a playoff spot by Justin Thomas. And JT ends up missing. He ends up 71st in the FedEx Cup rankings, so he is not in the playoffs, which is amazing. But I actually think that's a good thing because you have to have some shocks, right? Like the FedEx has been around for quite some time now, and it's not the first time you've had a great player or a world-renowned player miss out. But I actually think this is pretty good for the process in terms of keeping this, built up in the anticipation of the playoffs and something that the PGA Tour has been building towards for a long time. Every once in a while, you got to have a great player who has a down year and misses. And that's what happened here with JT.
I totally agree. Look, it's just like team sports. I think that sometimes you've got to have, somebody else winning. You can't have the same people winning all the time. You can't do that to fans on a national or international basis. You can do that locally. I'm sure everybody in Boston and New England thought it was great for 20 years that the Patriots were in the Super Bowl every year, but the rest of us are like, what the heck's going on here? So it's nice when the Raptors come out of nowhere and suddenly win a title with Kawhi, that kind of thing. It's great. And in golf, as they transition the sport away from kind of like when Michael Jordan left the NBA, and I know this is the 35th anniversary of Gretzky getting traded and Pocklington being, just the devil in that country. But when you have upsets, when you have things in sports happen that aren't supposed to happen, quote unquote, that's a good thing for sports. It kind of shuffles people through. And I think Justin Thomas was a great storyline the last couple of weeks trying to get in, showing how important it is to him to try to make it to the playoffs. But I also think new blood is a good thing. And I think Justin Thomas is going to be perfectly fine. He's a great, great player. Just had a strange season, but he'll be back. And I think he'll also probably be on that Ryder Cup team with Zach Johnson for the United States.
And interesting, in terms of a bounce back, Ricky Fowler's ninth in the FedEx Cup standings, right? So, I mean, those redemption stories are great. I think in the big picture, Steve, as someone, you're knee deep in golf all the time, but as someone who watches it just as a fan, that the FedEx Cup has become, at first it was kind of like, what is this? It's gimmicky, but it's become a thing, right? It's fans like it.
Yeah, I think that in sports, especially in individual sports, like with golf and tennis, but in sports in general, I think that you look at resume keepers. So in golf, it was always win total on the PGA Tour and how many majors you won. Well, now it's win total and how many majors you won and how many Players' Championships you won, because that event has become much bigger over the years. And in the last 16 years, as it's built, from 2007 all the way to now, I think now it's McIlroy has 22, 24 victories, 4 majors, a Players, and 3 FedEx Cup titles. It's become one of those things that's on your resume permanently now because it's become it's risen in that stature in the sport, and I think that's a good thing. I think the FedEx Cup used to be contrived. I don't think it's as contrived now. I don't love the way it finishes in a couple of weeks in Atlanta with that staggered start, but I understand why they do it. But it's become a very big deal in this sport, no question.
With Steve Sands of NBC and the Golf Channel, we saw the 2024 schedule came out this week, Sandsy, and there's a couple of things moving around. Yep. A couple of the elevated events are moving around. But, LIV is still kind of hanging over the sport. And Jay Monahan, I guess he had a players-only meeting yesterday, and only like 24 guys even came to it of the 70 players. McIlroy wasn't even there. I'm wondering what you make of that and where we're at today compared to maybe where we were 2 or 3 months ago when it comes to Monahan, the PGA, and LIV Golf.
Well, when we were spilling Diet Cokes into computers on your set up in Toronto, it was a whole different story that week. If you remember, that week was Tuesday. That week was when they announced that they were going to have a partnership with LIV. and all the chaos that ensued there. And I think that started that week at the RBC Canadian Open. That started the kind of retraction of Rory McIlroy as the face and voice of this whole thing for the PGA Tour. He didn't like the way that whole thing went down, and I don't blame him for being sideswiped by something like that when he was put out there by the Tour. And I think where we are now, as far as Jay yesterday, guys, look, Jay's got an uphill battle here to gain the trust back of the players. They really want to know what's going on. They want to know what's happening. And he can only tell them so much. You can't have these kinds of deals and have everybody knowing about it and everybody leaking it, that type of thing. So I think Jay has an uphill battle. So if you want to look into 24 of the 70 guys who are there, you can. I'm not talking about you guys, but anybody. You can, because, look, he's lost a lot of trust from the players. So whether he gets that back or not, man, he's a really good guy. I don't know if you guys have ever met him. Is he the right guy for the job? That's for other people to decide. But he's a really good guy. But he's lost the trust of the players right now. But he can gain it back, but it'll be tough, very tough. I think that in the next few weeks, I would think after the FedEx Cup is decided, there could be an announcement between LIV and the PGA Tour if they can come together and have a deal. It has to be done by December 31st, or else it kind of goes away. So I don't know. Will the Department of Justice allow it to happen? Will the LIV players accept what is put in front of them? Will the PGA Tour players allow it? They're the ones who have a seat at the table with the board right now. So there are a lot of questions, and nobody has the answers right now. Nobody. Not even the guys who are doing the negotiating. They don't even know because they're still in the middle of the negotiations.
And here we are, Steve, with Rory right in the thick of the race in the FedEx Cup standings, right in third spot right there. How interesting is that with that as the backdrop?
It's a lot. It's a lot. It's an interesting backdrop, and Rory he's such a great guy. He's a smart guy. He's obviously a World Golf Hall of Fame member. If he never hits another golf ball the rest of his life. And he put himself out there, and the Tour gave him the talking points, and Rory articulates things extremely well, and he was the right guy for it. And then he got just, bashed over the head, without knowing what was taking place that week when we were at the RBC Canadian Open up in Toronto with you guys. So for him to have a chance to win a fourth FedEx Cup, for him to be going through the next 3 weeks, having to deal with the questions off the course that we're talking about now, and having to deal with the difficult task of trying to be the best player the next 3 weeks against the best players in the world, he's up against it. But if there's anybody who can handle on and off the course as well as anybody on the planet, it's that guy. He can really handle his business.
With Steve Sands of NBC and the Golf Channel, I saw Scotty Scheffler's working on a new putter. He's got the Spider from TaylorMade. If that thing gets cooking here, Sandsy, that's got to be the most terrifying thing on tour, doesn't it? Because tee to green, this guy's like Tiger in 2000 right now. It's outrageous what he's doing tee to green. He just can't putt.
Drives the ball like a god, hits irons like he's Jack Nicklaus, and his short game is as magical as anybody in the sport. The putter hasn't cooperated at all. And you're right. I mean, look, the guy has one in 2023, one finish outside the top 12. It's remarkable. It's stunning. And the only reason he hasn't won more is because of the putter. Every other part of his game's been sharp. And if that putter, it doesn't even need to heat up. It just needs to be in the microwave and warm it up. And if he just gets that thing cooking a little, he'll definitely be there the next 3 weeks with another chance to win a FedEx Cup title. He had a very good chance to win it last year, kind of let us slip away on Sunday at the Tour Championship. But I expect Scotty to play well, and I expect him to putt a little bit better. That putting change is probably a little scary for some of the other PGA Tour players based on how he hits the ball.
Yep, as it should be. Sandsy, always great catching up with you, buddy. Enjoy the FedEx playoffs. We'll do it again real soon.
All right, fellas, anytime. 35 years ago today, man. I cannot believe it was 35 years ago today.
35 years ago.
You can't believe it.
Yes, we all can't.
Shame on Peter Pocklington. You don't trade Wayne Gretzky. I don't care what it is. Figure it out, man.
I'm with you on that one.
So,
Thank you.
Especially in our country, man. You can't do that.
Exactly.
Come on.
Don't get Hayes wound up here. Don't get Hayes wound up, Sands.
Treason.
Trade him to the Canadiens or the Leafs, I can get it. But you can't trade him down to L.A. Come on, man.
Treason. You're right. Where were the Leafs in '88? What were they doing? Anyway, thank you, Steve. Steve Sands. He's out. That's a mic drop.
He's the man.
Of the Golf Channel and NBC. Great guy.
Met him at the Olympics in Pyeongchang in 2018, working together for NBC.
Yeah.
Very funny guy. So he was doing rinkside interviews at speed skating.
Oh, yeah?
So I said, how'd it go tonight, Steve? We'd meet back up because our hockey games would end about the same time. He's, they skated, turned left a bunch of times. Dutch guy won.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
I mean, he's like, do you think the Capitals could really win this year? Like, do you think the Caps could win?
That was the year they won, too.
And
right?
I said, they've got as good a chance as anyone. I mean, they just keep knocking on the door. And so when they won, he sent me a text like, you said it. I said, no, Steve. What I said was they had as good a chance. I didn't say they'd win.
Right.
They had a chance. If you're in, you got a chance, right? So,
he's such a good guy.
But again, you talk about the luck, right? First two games of that series, the Caps lose. The first two games, first round series against Columbus, they start Philip Grubauer in goal.
Mm-hmm.
They lose games 1 and 2 on home ice and overtime. I'll never forget walking out of the rink and a guy going, same old Caps, man. Why do I even watch this team?
Mm-hmm.
I'm never going another game again in my life.
Yeah.
They win game 3 and I think double overtime. The puck goes off Lars Eller. Wasn't even looking. And it goes in off him. And they go on.
Rest is history.
They win the cup.
Yeah. I can remember when they played the Leafs in 16, I think it was.
Tom Wilson?
And, the Leafs had a 2-1 lead on them in the series.
Yeah.
And I remember doing shows and talking with people in Washington and asking, like, what's going on down there? And they're saying everyone's freaking out, like, same old Caps. Of course they're going to do it. And they ended up coming back and beating the Leafs in 6. Yeah. I think they lost in the second round that year. But that's what they had Justin Williams on the team at that point.
Yeah.
They had Ovi, obviously.
Net. I think they're like, what are they, 2-7 in series against Pittsburgh?
Yeah, Pittsburgh. They could not beat Pitt.
Pittsburgh's just their kryptonite, right?
They couldn't, but they did that year, I believe, right? Didn't they get past Pittsburgh when they went on that cup run? I think they did in 18. They beat Columbus and then played Pitt? I feel like they did. I don't know. It all blends together. Interesting what he said, though, that he thinks, Sandsy thinks Justin Thomas will be a part of that Ryder Cup team. We'll find out. Ryder Cup is in about a month. Just over that. And JT is really struggling, but he's Mr. American Golf. Like, he is the go-to, like, rah team captain.
Isn't it weird, though, in that sport more than any other, how a player can just, Ian Baker Finch, David Duval.
Lose it.
They just, all of a sudden, it's like you wake up and you forget how.
It's got to be terrifying. Like, I fully expect he turns it around and gets it back, but you just never know.
The margin of success,
in sports.
The difference in that sport is that the margin of success and failure is so like one swing.
Yeah.
Like in
you
tennis,
lip out a couple putts.
Like in tennis, you hit one off the frame, play the next point.
Right.
In golf,
that counts on the card.
Your putter goes cool. You hit some bad drives. For the most part, when you talk to PGA players, they talk about approach shots. The difference between good players and struggling players is putting the ball close.
Mm-hmm.
Getting the ball within 15 feet on a consistent basis.
Huge. Greens and regulation.
That's an enormous thing. And then, from there, and they miss, isn't it? They miss more than half the, is it 8-footers?
Yeah, exactly.
Or is it 6-footers?
That's why, like, 6-footers, I feel like it would be like above 50%.
I remember seeing a stat on that.
But it is staggering, though.
Yeah.
The amount of times they miss the green from 80 yards.
Right.
Like 80 yards. You would think they're 100 for 100. They're not.
The number of balls that go in the water on the 17th.
Yeah. Which, if you talk to people that have played TPC Sawgrass without the crowds, you've played it. O said he's played it 15 times. He's like, it's not a tough hole. He's like, it's a little flip wedge. You throw it on. The green's massive.
Yeah.
And like, if you're not nervous or whatever, like if you're a good player, competent player, you should step up, put the peg in the ground. Easier said than done, but you just, hit a little wedge, hit a 9-iron. You find the middle of the green, you move on with a 2-putt par. But you get there, and the tournament's on the line. There's 50,000 people around there. There's 3 million on the line. It's the 17th. The wind is moving, and you're like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah.
And you're right. The amount of guys who put it in the first time, then go to the drop zone, back in the water. Yeah. Like the amount of guys that take 8s and 9s there, it's crazy.
It's weird. So I've not played Augusta. James Duthie has, but I covered the Masters in the 90s. And when you go and see 12, the 12th hole, it looks like nothing.
Yeah. The short hole.
It's nothing. It's just,
Yeah. Well, I remember Nicholas saying, and I think Sandsy's told us this, like Nicholas played 12 at Augusta the same way, where every single round, regardless of where the pin was, he said, right over that front bunker, middle of the green.
Yeah.
He said, simplify it, because guys get silly and start thinking, all right, I'm going to shave this off, or I'm going to hit a cut, or I'm going to draw it in, or the pin's far right or bottom left. He's like, I stepped up to that tee box every round and said, I'm hitting it right there.
Yeah.
And that's what he did. And then he'd take his 2-putt par and leave. Which a 2-putt par.
And then he'd birdie 13.
And then he birdie 13, 15. Birdie 15, and then boom, the tournament's probably in his hands. Because whoever he was chasing or whoever was chasing him took a 4 or 5 on 12 because they put one in the water.
So the funny thing is so if you look at the great players at golf, Nicklaus, certainly Palmer, Tiger, they were measurably longer than everyone, right?
Mm-hmm.
They were
hit the ball a mile.
They were way longer.
Nicklaus hit the ball a mile.
They were way longer off the tee than everyone else. It's harder to be longer than everyone else now, but Scheffler is.
Scheffler, tee to green, his statistics, Gord, are absurd. How good he is.
If you watch him play in person, he hits a 5-iron, like that just
it's a missile that comes off there. And like McIlroy's the same. Like Rory hits a 5-iron with the same trajectory that you and I would hit a 9-iron.
Yeah,
like it pops in the air.
Johnson.
They're superstars. Yep, they are. All right, Jays Guardians tonight. Yusei Kikuchi deserved better last night. How many times did we say that last year?
Deserved's got nothing to do with it.
Doesn't make a difference. How many runs you put up. Not the deserve game. I understand that.
I will say this, though. That's not on him.
No,
I think
Kikuchi did what he's supposed to.
I think wins are a terrible stat for pitchers, terrible stat for goalies, terrible stat for starting quarterbacks. You go out there and you do what you can.
I disagree with you on quarterbacks because
you play a third of the game.
You play more than that. Special teams is not a third of the game. It's not even. There's way more snaps in offense, defense. Well, special teams factors in.
Roughly, 60 snaps a game on offensive?
Yeah, I guess, give or take.
Maybe 70,
yeah, something like that, depending on how much ball possession you have. I just think the quarterback position, you have the ball in your hand every single play.
But you're not responsible. You do what you can, but
you are responsible though. You're more responsible. Like
you don't play defense.
You don't play defense. No.
Lots of great quarterbacks have had bad defense.
Yeah, and they still win games. And they win games because they're the quarterback and they're so elite. Like I think you.
Okay,
like I'll give you an example. When Peyton Manning won, I believe his first Super Bowl in Indianapolis, I'm pretty sure they had the 32nd ranked defense in the league. I'd have to go back. They had Bob Sanders there. They had a decent rush, but like collectively, statistically, they were one of the worst defensive teams in the league. And Peyton was so good, and they could compensate for bad defense because he was so
okay. So I would say this
capable of putting
let's rephrase it then.
On the board.
I don't blame quarterbacks when they lose.
What's that?
I don't blame quarterbacks when they lose.
Oh, I do. I absolutely do. Not all the time. That's not across the board.
Yeah.
But you got a tie game in a close game. You throw a bad pick. Who else should be getting blamed
for a starting pitcher for a goaltender? Like I mean,
goaltending's not.
That's run support.
You need support. You need support. I guess what I'm saying is with a quarterback, you can compensate for poor defense.
If you
can't outscore your problems.
You can have any goalie.
You can't outsave.
You can have any goalie to play Game 7 for you in his prime. Who do you want?
I guess I'd take Prime Hasek.
Yeah. Where's he in the wins list?
No. Although he dragged his team to a 99 Cup final, which was incredible.
It is. No, it's Hasek for me.
Yeah.
It's absolutely, it's Hasek for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
Scotty Bowman will tell you that the two best goalies he's ever been around were Terry Sawchuk and Dominic Hasek.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Listen,
So last night, yeah, it was tough, but
I'm not. Yusei Kikuchi did everything he could.
Yeah.
I agree with you in the pitching stats. I agree with you in terms of wins and losses in baseball. And it's largely antiquated. Leaning on that, it's kind of changed. Goaltending, you can steal games with goaltending. Like you can steal games, and that should factor into how people look at your wins and losses.
You can steal games with goal scoring.
Yeah, you can. But if your goalie's horrendous that night, you can score 7, the other team can score 8. I don't know.
And the goalie that gave up 7 gets the win.
That's right. Well deserved. All right. Keegan Matheson will join us. His take on Yusei Kikuchi last night. Also, Kevin Gausman on the mound tonight. Alec Manoah back on the mound tomorrow. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 2. All right. Jays Guardians tonight. Kevin Gausman on the mound. The Jays last night, they can't hit, man. Can't get big hits in big moments.
They can hit.
Just not when you have runners in scoring position and nothing's going yard right now.
So I asked someone in baseball who's been in baseball a long time, about it. He was saying that the weird thing is that when there's runners in scoring position, you get more strikes.
Yeah, the pitcher's nervous.
The pitcher
is supposed to be.
The pitcher
nervous.
has to be more careful. You should actually hit better.
Right. Ideally, you should.
So his thing was, it might just be a fluke. It might just be a run of bad luck.
It very well could be. I mean, listen, they had 9 hits last night, but no runs. Cleveland, 3 hits, 1 run. They win the ball game. Let's head down there now, catch up with Keegan Matheson of MLB.com. Keegan, you're around this team every day. Like, I don't know if you can ask about runners in scoring position every day, but you probably should, right? Like, are you peppering these guys every day with runners in scoring position questions?
Yeah, I feel like I need to come up with different words, different phrases to ask the same question every day. I have a thesaurus on me, but that's been the whole season, guys. And part of it is luck. That's the tough part, because people like me like to sound smart and have the answer. You do need to turn some of it over to luck, but it's not all luck. And the part that is not luck is what matters. And where I turn my attention for runners in scoring position and this whole topic is adjustments. Because if you are a pitcher on the mound, you've got a runner on third base and 1 out, you are making an adjustment. Obviously, the Blue Jays are not adjusting back to that. So they are not counterpunching, for example. They are not coming back with their own adjustments. And that's been an issue. You know, guys, 10, 20, 30 games into the season, sure, you call it bad luck, you keep rolling on. We're 100 and some games in. It's August. It's not all bad luck. There's a reason for it. And at this point, it's, you know, you've been promised it will turn around for a long time, but when is that? Not a lot of time left.
You know, Keegan, I saw a clip of George Springer from last night, and, you know, he's obviously deflated and disappointed in it. I wonder how much of it becomes kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. It becomes a vicious circle of we're struggling with runners in scoring position, and it becomes this narrative that surrounds this team.
That's a tough part, the mental side, guys. Think of if you're out on the golf course, you have a tap-in putt. If you don't think about it and you walk up and whack it in, easy, no problem. You make 100 out of 100. If you lip out on one, then the next hole, you're lining up this 6-inch putt. You are overthinking it. You are imagining what could go wrong. It happens in any sport. And in baseball, that appears to be something situational like this, runners in scoring position. And the players are aware of it. John Schneider's aware of it. The coaches are, because we talk about it almost every day. And when something's in front of you, when something's on your mind, that can wear on you. That's why over the course of a long baseball season, you'll see guys do anything and everything just to free up their mind, get their mind off of what might be ailing them. That's why baseball players are so superstitious and do so many strange things. Might be time for a few more of those things, because that problem has stuck around.
So Jay's back in action tonight. Davis Schneider was not in the lineup last night. The night before, he was batting leadoff. I was on the show here yesterday challenging that decision. I thought it was silly. I mean, the guy, he had a phenomenal performance in Boston. I know they're dealing with some injuries right now, but to bat him leadoff, I thought was doomed to fail, and it did. He wasn't the only guy a couple nights ago, but now he's back in the lineup tonight. He's playing second tonight, and I believe he's hitting 6th in the lineup. This feels more appropriate. What are you expecting after a night off from Davis Schneider?
Yeah, this is where he should be. This makes a lot more sense. I was surprised to see him up at number 1. That doesn't usually happen that quickly, even if you are a number 1 prospect, let alone Davis Schneider, who's earned his way up like this. And an incredible story that I think folks know now how he's developed and made it here. People love the mustache. They love the Air Monarchs. They love the whole thing. Now you need to produce. And pitchers are going to be aware of Davis Schneider now. A week ago, you'd say, who cares? I'll throw that guy my best pitches and strike him out. Then he does what he does in Boston, and you don't want to be another guy getting rocked by Davis Schneider. So pitchers are going to game plan for him, and like we talked about earlier, guys, is that adjustment back. How is Davis Schneider going to adjust back? Earlier this series, we saw a lot of high fastballs, kind of like how pitchers pitch to Kevin Biggio, just hammering him with their hardest fastballs. Schneider is a smart hitter. You have to be to get what he's gotten out of his talent. So I think he will make that adjustment. But man, oh man, if he can keep going at a rate even half as good as he started out, that's a major bonus for this team. And that's something that that matters in the clubhouse, too. We can't measure that. We cannot put a fancy number on it. But a guy like that coming up and succeeding like he has, that wakes everybody up. Sure. At this point of the season, guys are tired. You're mentally worn down. You see someone like that having success, that's going to perk you up and really lock you in, ideally, if you're the Blue Jays.
I find it interesting they got Springer hitting, second tonight. You got Witt hitting first. What do you see happening when Bichette returns in terms of Springer's role, Whit Merrifield's role? With a perfectly healthy lineup, I guess you could include Kiermaier in that. How do you see the 1, 2, 3, 4 kind of shaking out in the next 2 or 3 weeks?
Yeah, if everybody's healthy and performing just kind of like they are right now, I think you see Whit Merrifield still up at the top there. He has been putting balls in play, reaching base. His speed, I think, is an underrated part. He's stealing bags this year. I like Bo in that number 2 spot so much. I think that's a very natural spot for him, where he can reach base and be a run scorer, but also drive in some runs himself. He is so good. I like that hitter, number 2. Springer is, surprisingly at this point, guys, the awkward one to put into this lineup. Not in terms of playing every day, but where you slot him 1 through 9. Earlier on, when Witt moved up the leadoff spot, you saw him a bit around that number 6 spot. Maybe that makes a bit of sense until George gets going. But we're talking about one of the better leadoff hitters this past decade, a guy who is very unique, and you've got to get him back to where he was. This is not Springer at his peak talent, and we talk about Vladdy and some other guys a lot, but the Blue Jays need more from Springer. There have not been any major injuries we have heard of, so the expectations were a lot higher than this.
So, Keegan, Varsho and Springer showed some signs on this road trip of kind of turning things around a little bit. Matt Chapman in the sweep of Boston played pretty well. Where does Chapman fit in all this?
Chapman can be such an important piece here, and the beauty of Chapman is that even if he goes 0 for 10 in a series, he's probably going to make a couple of really good defensive plays. And even watching last night's game with Chapman out of the lineup, there was one ball, I believe, that just got past Santiago Espinal, and the first thing I said was, wow, that makes you appreciate Matt Chapman because he's so good. You almost don't notice how good he is at third base, but his bat coming around, guys, getting back to what he was in April would be really important to this team because they need life from somewhere. And if you are not going to hit with runners in scoring position, if you're not going to be consistent with that, you've got to hit home runs. This team needs to hit home runs, period. They are built to be one of the 2 or 3 most powerful teams in this league. That has not happened. And if you go 0 for 10 with runners in scoring position, but hit 2 home runs, people probably forget about it. I probably forget about it, and I probably don't ask you about it the next day. Power erases a lot of bad things really quick.
I have buried the lead here, and I apologize to Yusei Kikuchi because we're talking about the game tonight. We're talking about Davis Schneider, and we haven't talked about Yusei Kikuchi. And this guy, I've been pumping his tires all year, but every time he has a great start, I get people sending me DMs saying, you better apologize to this guy, as if I was the only one pointing out how disappointing he was. Right, Gord?
Yes.
Right, Gord? I was not the only one pointing out the facts. That was Kevin Brown last year. Yusei was a mess. But now it's all good because Yusei is not a mess anymore. He's got a 3.53 ERA. I thought he was lights out last night. That's not the 27 Yankees down in Cleveland, but still a lot of swing and miss stuff. I mean, this guy has been unbelievable, Keegan. If it wasn't for the Manoah story, I feel like this would be the premium and pinnacle story of the rotation this year, the redemption of Yusei Kikuchi.
Absolutely. He has been incredible, and last year he was terrible. And you had to call it what it is.
Yeah.
Last year was really bad, and it burned the bullpen over and over and over. Because on his bad days, you would see it immediately. There are some first innings last year that took weeks off my life watching him. This year, he has been incredible. It is difficult to praise Kikuchi enough this year because not only has he been good, but if you had told me, guys, going into this year, Kikuchi will have a 3.5 ERA, I would say I will have what you are drinking, and probably that's going to mean elite starts and a few bad starts, back and forth, inconsistent. That hasn't been the case. He has been a 3.5 ERA guy almost every time out. He's consistent now. And if you ever want to see what confidence looks like in a pitcher, I think that's Yusei Kikuchi right now. He is locked in, and he clearly believes in himself. That's exactly what it looks like.
Keegan, we'll let you get back at it. Should be a good one in Cleveland tonight. Thank you for doing this, buddy.
You got it, guys. Take care.
Keegan Matheson of MLB.com. Jays Guardians tonight down in Cleveland. Not the mistake on the lake.
Love Cleveland.
You're a big Cleveland guy.
One of my favorite letters ever written. You ever hear the paper airplane letter?
No.
Guy wrote to the Cleveland Browns in the 70s saying that fans were folding up the program and making paper airplanes. It was a hazard. And someone could lose an eye or hurt their ear. And since ushers weren't doing anything about it, this guy wrote the Browns and said, I'm holding you responsible if I or someone in my party gets hurt by one of these paper airplanes. And the Browns lawyer wrote back and said, I'm including this letter that we received. I just thought you'd know that some jerk, used a different word, is signing your name to stupid letters.
There's a lot of history in Cleveland.
I like Cleveland.
You like Cleveland?
I do.
It's a blue-collar town. That's what everyone says.
I love Pittsburgh, too.
Gritty.
Pittsburgh's not a blue-collar town.
Pittsburgh's a cool town.
Pittsburgh is universities.
Yeah. Got a good casino down there.
High-tech, pharmaceuticals.
Yeah, they got that big sandwich spot that everyone loves.
I'm talking about,
No, I know.
And you're talking about food.
Yeah, I'm talking about food. I was down there one time. Bill Cowher was at the lobby bar. It was great. Sitting there having drinks with Bill Cowher.
I sat behind him at the tennis one, at the U.S. Open tennis. I said, excuse me, are you Kevin Westgar's father-in-law? He's like, who are you? I said, well, hockey. He said, you hockey people.
Right. He looks mean, man. Cowher looks mean.
He was like
great coach.
Yeah,
great coach. Man. Good analyst too. There's a lot of stuff with CBS. Today's best bets powered by FanDuel. Make your picks and assemble a same-game parlay in seconds on the FanDuel Sportsbook app. Looking at the FedEx Cup. Scotty Scheffler with a new putter, top 10. Ricky Fowler with basically a whole new lease on life, top 20 this week. Corey Connors, your boy, Canadian, top 40. You parlay that. Scheffler T10, Fowler T20, Connors T40. You get plus 350 on that parlay. I love it. Today's best bets powered by FanDuel. Bet on star players to score, assist, or have a shot on goal in a soccer same-game parlay. Please play responsibly. Must be 19 plus and physically located in Ontario. We'll come back, recap a busy afternoon. Gord Miller's in here. I'm Bryan Hayes. OverDrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 2. All right, Jay's back in action tonight. FedEx Cup kicking off tomorrow. CFL. You got the National Bank Open, too, right?
Yeah.
Tennis. My parents are going up tonight.
That's a good night tonight. I think
Alcaraz is playing tonight.
Yep,
Alcaraz is playing.
He's amazing, man. Like
he knows what he's doing. He knows what he's doing.
He's your classic sort of his first serve's not great. His second serve is out of this world.
Mm-hmm.
Who does that?
It's a good question.
He gets everything back.
He's the new man, right?
Yeah.
Like he's the guy.
And he's 20.
Yeah, it's wild how young he is. And sounds really down to earth. Still lives with his parents, I think.
Yeah, it's that sport. We've talked about golf. That tennis and golf to me, teammates can't save you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe in tennis, there's just a guy you can't beat for whatever reason. You could be one of the best players and you just can't beat him, right? The famous story about Nadal and Federer, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Nadal couldn't beat Federer for the longest time. So Uncle Tony, Nadal's coach, watched 5 years of Federer matches on tape, especially his backhand, to figure out a way to beat Federer and unlocked it. And then Nadal kind of mastered Federer.
There you go.
But it's, in golf, if you're having a bad day on a hockey team, maybe your teammate picks you up. If you have a tough day in the mound in baseball, guy hits a 3-run home run, but in golf and tennis, pressure.
Well, you're on your own. And the thing is, with tennis, though, you are directly in competition with another player.
Right.
Golf, it's different. It's the whole feel.
If you shoot 67, you had a good day.
You're like, hey, I played well.
You and I can play together, and we both have a good day. In tennis, one of us has to lose.
Right, exactly. And you could have 4 good days and finish 20th and make a lot of money. In tennis, if you have a really good day, but the other guy has a great day in the first round, you're out.
You don't get paid.
Yeah, you're gone.
You get paid less, yeah.
That's...
And the thing
there's
is,
no making the cut in tennis. You got to win every single time you're on the court.
If you're not in the top 20, it's a grind.
Tennis, it's a lot of travel.
It's a lot of travel. It's a
hard on your body.
And the way the seeding works, you always get tough opponents early.
Right. Well, you look at Alcaraz, he's got to buy the top 8 seeds, I believe, in this tournament. Got all the way to Wednesday.
Right.
Raonic has played multiple times already. And he's back in action tomorrow. Alcaraz is making his debut tonight. These guys are like, hey, I'll show up and ready to rock. Tournament's over on Sunday. Off to Cincinnati.
I used to call that tournament.
It's quick.
I called that tournament a couple of times.
In Cincinnati or in Toronto?
No, Toronto.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we used to call it. Well, it was named after a cigarette company.
Right.
And yeah, I got called in late to do it, and it was like
That'd be cool.
halfway through it, I'm like, hang on a second, you don't talk during the point. The analyst does the replays. And
What are you doing?
And the chair umpire gives the score. By the second day, I was eating a sandwich doing it. I was like,
You're just loving life. It's a great setup calling tennis. Yeah, so we'll see. Alcaraz in action tonight. Raonic winning again today.
good thing your folks are going.
Yeah, they're going, and my in-laws are going tomorrow. Doug and Linda, they're going to be there tomorrow. We got a whole. It's a big thing with all my parents and in-laws and all that.
So if you get get tennis tickets like that, you should be money for Taylor.
It's just a matter of time before I get Taylor Swift tickets.
T Swift in November should be.
Yeah, there's JP sent me something suggesting that 31 million people signed up for the access code to get tickets to Toronto.
Didn't a ticket for tonight just sell for $21,000 or something?
How's that possible? Like the access code.
Did you say that?
Is that fake news, JP?
Blog TO had the story that people are reselling a ticket for $21,000.
So
I'm calling my daughter. Cash in, kid.
Like they got the ticket through the access code and everything, and are now trying to resell
They're
it.
asking for that.
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
They haven't sold it yet.
I see.
No. Someone's asking for $21,000.
What an idiot, though. Like, shame on you. You got the tickets and you're already trying to sell them for $21,000.
Free enterprise, baby.
Yeah, it's capitalism. All right, Gord. I'll see you tomorrow.
Can't wait.
Yeah, it'll be great. Gord Miller. We love seeing you, buddy. All right, thanks to everyone behind the scenes, everyone for tuning in today. Radio, TV, podcast, web. We appreciate it. We're out of here. Enjoy your evenings. Enjoy the games tonight. We're back tomorrow at 4 p.m. We'll chat then.